Welcome back to Max's Mean Machines, where the wiring begins. So I have an easy wire kit, easy for them to say. Wiring is definitely not my strong point, but if you start at the beginning and work your way through,
I'm laying out all my wiring. So this is obviously all for the lights and the horn. Coming across the engine compartment there is the choke, AC compressor, and a few other things. This is for a bunch of switches. Those wires going over there is going to go through the firewall at that end for the starter motor solenoid, power to the fuse box, coil, tack, and fans. And then we got the wires running to the back there for the lights, third brake light, which will probably be the trailer lights, trunk light, and license plate. And then you've got the pink and yellow wire there for the fuel sender and the fuel pump. So I'm not sure, I don't think this particular fuel pump needs a relay. So I'll have to put relays on the fans, but I think that's the only thing I need to use relays on. Alright, I'm doing the electrics. Got a million things to put in.
This is the controller for my dual electric fans. It's quite.
This is what I have left electronically to put in the car. I've mounted the fans, the horn, the headlights, backlights, fans, and the fan controller, and anyway, a lot of it's done. But I've got the speedo to wire in, GPS speedo to wire in, and then we've got 4 cameras going in it, 2 front, 2 back. And then these are going to be all my gauges going in, the rev counter, a touch screen, music center, and LED lighting for inside and outside, and then my reflectors on the door, and my indicator.
So this is my homemade speedo surround. So I wired that in.
I wired all my lights on my panel to tell me various things like, you know, rear spotlights on, high beam, lights are on, indicators, fans on, etc. But the wires are so thin, I was concerned that any weight on the wires and they could break. So I've actually connected larger wires for them so that they stick under the dash and are easy to connect, and I've labeled them. And I've taped them down so that they won't get pulled out. So hopefully that'll work.
So here you see my homemade gauge cluster, and wiring all the lights in sequence there. And it looks pretty cool. It's kind of factory looking, and you know, used aluminum plates there for both the speedo and the gauge cluster, and it's quite effective. I was quite happy with that.
Now, slowly getting there with the wiring. Now doing the dash. putting my gauge cluster in. Everything's connected, marked all the wires, connected my oil pressure, my vacuum line, and my temp, which still needs to be connected in the engine area. And there we go.
You know, I haven't really got anything that enlightening to say about doing wiring, except wiring does scare me. And, you know, I look at all these millions of wires and it seems a little bit daunting to do it. But quite frankly, wiring isn't really as difficult as you would think. Especially when you have a wiring kit which has, you know, the appropriate wires listed, and on the wires it will say, you know, indicator light or fuel gauge or headlights, you know, left headlight, right headlight, you know. So, you know, you just take your wires and you follow the directions and you pull them to the components. And sometimes you may have to YouTube, you know, how the wiring diagram is for a specific component, you know, especially when you're doing it from scratch like this. But at the end of the day, it's like anything else. You just take it one step at a time. Don't look at the whole job. You know, just take one thing at a time. I'm going to wire in the fuel gauge. Okay, it needs a ground and, you know, etc. If you just take it one component at a time, it really isn't too bad, and I think a lot of you guys can probably manage it. If I can manage it, you can probably manage it. Also, when you're doing a new build like this and you're rewiring everything, each component, you know, comes with a wiring diagram, and you know, there's the ignition switch, and it will show, you know, battery powering and ignition wire and accessory, and you'll look at the wiring diagram, and you know, before you know it, you're kind of getting to understand it. But you know, I've said this before, I don't really do anything enough, because I do a bit of everything. I don't really do anything enough to become a real expert at it. So, you know, often I'm quite methodical every time I get around to doing another project. But I get it done, as they say. Temperature isn't getting above 160, which is when the fans come on at like 50%. Fans come on at 100% around about 170. So obviously this engine is not going to run hot. Oil pressure
flash on idle, sitting at 55. Rev counter sitting at 800.
It's alive, so I'm happy. Everything seems to be working as it should, and I'm feeling quite happy. Now I have to clean it all up, make it look neat and tidy. I've probably still got some more things to do, but it's all coming together really nicely. Checking out all my lights. I've got all my front lights, they all change colours, and yeah, it's coming along really good. So that's in police mode. Fire engine mode. Love you. So we think green's one of the best colour for the running lights, and you can make it dark or light. You can also have the music flash into music, they change colours, or you can have it rotating rainbow style. My wiring's getting pretty much complete. I'm just going to, I've jerry-rigged this to see everything works, and it does, although my flasher unit isn't powered, so the flashers aren't flashing properly. So I've ordered a different flasher unit for the LED lights, and I've actually used twisties on these because they're basically for the gauge lights and the panel lights, so that I can add and connect as I add different components on. And I've never had problems with them in the past, and I don't want each individual wire connected, so I like it better like that. And I've got two main power feeds, one feeding the starter switch with a 30 amp fuse, and then I've got a 40 amp breaker there feeding everything else, so that they're protected. And then, you know, everything's fused through the fuse box. But if there's a major short on the big wire, I don't want it to burn up, so I'd prefer it to trip a fuse. And I still got to install the horn button and you know, quite a few other things. But basically the car runs now and all the lights work. So I'll neaten this up, and all these wires are being unused. And I got some little connections to go for my brake switch, which is here, which I'll put together a little bit later. But that's the dealy bob. So often when you buy a wiring kit, they give you wires for everything: fuel injection system, and, you know, automatic choke and different things. And so there may end up, you know, quite a few wires that you end up not using. And normally I just cut them off, you know, leaving enough so that I can use them down the road if I wanted to connect something to them, and just put a twisty on them so that they don't short on anything. This is all my gauges and stuff: transmission, fuel, oil, volts, water, vacuum, GPS for miles and speed, rev counter, a touch screen play center with a forward and rear camera, and then I've got a rear camera set up, and you can't really see because the light's reflecting on it, but yeah, that's got the rear camera is actually in the mirror. Because it's so high, I wanted to get good visibility behind me, so I got an electronic mirror so that I can see behind me. And then we got our music and the automatic, and it's all looking good. So this is my wiring to the back. My speakers are wired through the middle of the car. My speaker wires with the camera wires, they go through the middle of the car. And I've got
my spotlight wire and my main battery cables running along that side. My 99% of my wiring is through this fuse box here. Easy wire harness, so everything's newly wired. And but I do have some live feeds coming in on this side, and I've taken a few power things from here. I'm going to run my AC from here and, you know, fuse it directly. And so here's, I've got a main feed to probably go to my AC. I've got a 20 amp fuse here, which is going to my rear spotlights, and then I've got another wire wired into it, which I'll probably feed my cigarette lighter and charging ports. So charging ports for this one's going to my spotlights. This is the spotlight switch. When I turn it on, light comes on the dash, constant power. So anyway, so I remember.
Well, it all turned out really good, and I think you know how I did it. It integrated with the car really well, and everything kind of fitted in. Almost looked kind of factory looking, even though it wasn't. So yeah, I was really pleased with it.